So $25,000 in revenue the first year. Compare that to today for us. What's the average monthly revenue that you're looking at today?
Yeah, we're at about 500K. Our target for this year is actually 670K monthly in gross revenue. And that will be at about 14 million in gross revenue in 3 to 5 years.
Wow. Are you considering starting an electric company? I'm Alex Freeman, and on this episode of the Upflip podcast, we have Joel Walsman, the first Tesla solar products installer in Indiana. As the owner of Jefferson Electric, he makes over $500,000 a month and employs over 50 people. Today, he's going to tell us his strategies and answer questions like what he did to get started, what the benefits are of being the first to offer a specific manufacturer's equipment, how he acquires clients, and how he manages his business. Joel also has a YouTube channel teaching people how to properly do installs. He's going to share his insight with us on how to start a successful electrical company. Joel, thanks for joining us on the Upflip podcast.
Alex, absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
And to get things started, tell us a little bit about your background. When did you start Jefferson Electric? What made you decide to start your own electrical business?
Yeah, so I was that high schooler who was open to doing anything except one thing, and that's go to college. I never went to college. I knew I didn't have the appetite, but I started right in at the age of 19 with a master electrician. I was an apprentice, and it was just a one-man operator hired me on. And that is exactly where I received the total foundation for the success of Jefferson Electric. I worked with him for about 2.5 years until he phased into retirement. It was the 2008 housing market crash. I still wasn't convinced that one, I wanted to be an electrician, or two, I wanted to have my own business, but I wasn't able to get a job easily. I didn't try real hard, but because it didn't fall in my lap like it had the first time, I actually just incidentally decided to start Jefferson Electric. And it was literally just me and my little Ford Ranger pickup truck with milk crates in the back full of parts. And, I was off and running.
So how important was that apprenticeship experience in getting the business started and off the ground?
Oh, 100%. I can enumerate the value. One, I received context for not just the trade and the skill itself, which that's number one, but number two, the context for operating a business and basic business process and customer service and all the things that an apprentice learns when they're standing next to their supervisor and the supervisor is problem solving, troubleshooting, whether it's with people on projects, whether it's with other contractors, rubbing shoulders, making connections. A lot of those people we worked with on job sites turned into my customers. A lot of those, other vendors, other contractors, and not just those customers. I acquired a partial customer base from my employer when they moved on. And I also received some basic tooling and leftover materials. So, it's just everything. There's nothing that didn't help with and teach me.
And so from those, those humble beginnings, you've grown into a very large and successful company. And what skill or experience do you think that you have that has been most influential for your company's growth?
I think teaching and leading. And being a good teacher could almost be a subset of being a good leader. But I do want to just kind of illuminate both of those. I think it's Simon Sinek says, he who understands people best wins. And I think that's one of the qualities of a good leader. It's not just fearlessness. It's not just vision. It really is, the focus on caring well for others. And then teaching is kind of self-explanatory too, from the standpoint of like electricians, apprenticeship model, we teach, that's what we impart the information and knowledge and skills we have. And that's how I was trained. And that's the training I've been able to provide to others then.
And then along the way, did you learn any entrepreneurial hacks or strategies that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the people dynamic again for me. And there's more than one way to run a business, and there's more than one type of business, even if you're talking about electrical contracting. But it's treat people like gold, and they will do anything for you. If they work for you, they'll trust you. If they're your customer, they'll give you the key to the back door. If they see in the small ways of how you communicate and interact that you're someone who can be fully trusted and has their best interest at heart, they'll do anything for you.
What are the ways you do that with your current employees? How are you investing in them, and how are you showing them how much value they bring to you and your company?
Okay, so as a leader, you've got to deal with the good and the bad. So one of our phrases is build up in public, tear down in private. And if you're consistent to that, then people know they're not going to be humiliated And when their name is called out in front of everybody at a team meeting, it's only going to be good. So just little things like that, public recognition, $50 handshakes, literally just slip a bill in your hand, give them a pat in the back, and don't give them positive affirmation. More importantly, and more impact is found in specific affirmation. If you give them specific public affirmation, then what you're doing is a teaching moment for everybody that says, you'll get $50 because people know about these $50 handshakes, right? You'll get $50. You'll be honored. And it's because of this exact behavior that we want to see reproduced throughout the company. So that right there, that little equation, super powerful.
Going back to a little bit to the beginnings there, what was your initial startup budget for the company? And what are those most significant initial expenses?
The equipment costs, the tooling costs are relatively low as opposed to like landscaping and some other things that you can think of. So I actually only had about $15,000 in a used pickup truck and basic tooling to launch Jefferson Electric.
And how long did it take to recoup that initial investment?
Okay, so I had some head trash related to money, and I didn't value myself, my time, my skills properly. So my first year in business, I only made $25,000 gross. That's all in total receipts. And I think I made like 9K. That was my take home. That's what I put on my taxes, $9,000. And so it took a while to overcome some head trash. And really, that's where the battle is fought. It's between the ears a lot of times. And to start charging properly for my services. And so I'm going to say it could have been a heck of a lot shorter if I had been older and wiser. I'm still glad that I started young, though. No regrets there. But it was probably about 2.5 years to recoup that.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the pricing mistakes that you were making in those early days?
I acted, for one, a little bit like a handyman. So I was a generalist, not a specialist. I would accept other kinds of jobs that came along because a customer says, hey, I trust you. I like you. Could you also do this for me? And my default position and answer was yes, even if it was completely unrelated to the electrical trade. And so that watered down my services. It expanded my overhead by having to purchase more tools. And so it was really a net negative. But back to that poverty mindset that I didn't believe wholeheartedly that I could find enough viable business in my chosen field. And I felt like I had to say yes to everybody and everything. So I wasn't picky about customers. So I got bad customers. I wasn't picky about jobs. So I got bad jobs. And by bad, I mean they weren't what was best for me and the business. I had no marketing and no marketing budget. And so I just kind of took everything that came along. And word of mouth referrals are phenomenal. They are the best. You get the key to the back door on conversation number one, as opposed to building trust over time. But also, they're not always top revenue, top choice kinds of projects. And so it was failure to be selective. It was failure to understand market conditions. It was failure to believe in myself, really.
So $25,000 in revenue the first year. Compare that to today for us. What's the average monthly revenue that you're looking at today?
Yeah, we're at about 500K. Our target for this year is actually 670K monthly in gross revenue.
And have you been growing year over year? And how much growth have you seen in those timeframes?
Yeah, well, we had one hard year in 2018 where we actually had made kind of uninformed and overly optimistic decisions in 2017. And we can go into that in more detail. That caused 2018 to be the only year in which we saw Jefferson Electric recede, but we've had 35 to 50% growth year over year, with the exception of 2018.
Yeah, please do go into some of that 2017 overly optimistic nature and how that came to be.
Well, let me juxtapose what I just talked about, and that's accepting every kind of job that comes along, like I did early on. Like I plumbed houses, I fixed doors, just all kinds of things. I've patched a couple roofs. That is generalization. Society at large, the entire planet today, rewards and recognizes, it's not an argument, rewards specialization. And so an electrician is a specialist, a handyman is a generalist. No shade on handyman, but their hourly billable rate, their earning power is not as high. And so we're electrical specialists, energy specialists. But within that domain, even if, let's say, you're just an electrician, within that domain, you've got the ability to diversify your market. For instance, if you get leads from realtors who are selling houses, that has its own seasonal rise and fall. That's got its own rhythm and market factors. Sometimes when general contracting is hot, real estate is slow, and vice versa, because they have different rhythms. While at Jefferson Electric in 2017, we made the decision to go exclusively solar energy as a company. Come to find out, the solar energy industry is called the solar coaster. It's really good at putting companies out of business because it's regulated nationally as well as at the state and local level. It is incredibly minced and chopped up across utility companies and jurisdictions. And it also is dramatically impacted by manufacturing in China, for instance, and international tariffs. There's so many layered facets, and we didn't understand all of the market dynamics in 2017 when we made that decision. So we said no to our repeat customers, our bread and butter, in 2017, thinking that we weren't going to serve their electrical needs anymore. We were going to be a solar company. We lost diversity of market within the electrical infrastructure industry. And 2018 was a total bust. We almost went out of business. We weren't able to meet our obligations. We had to break the bad news to our employees. We barely pulled it together. And after about 4 months of finally facing the full hardship of what we were looking at, after about 4 months, we were caught up and had paid everybody everything that we owed them. But it was pretty dicey.
So as you've grown over the past few years, what is your advice on the best way to scale an electrical business? Is it just adding clients and team members, or are there other avenues to growing that revenue potential?
Yeah. So let's talk about marketing real quick. But this is such a multifaceted question. I'm not going to do it justice. But at this point, we have a marketing budget because we're so laser focused on who our customer is. We know what their profile is across each one of our 8 different industry verticals. We know exactly where they live. We know what their age is, their income is, and not to the exclusion, or, we're not myopic and excluding other customers, but we just know where our target is. We get leads other places. That's fine, but our target is clear. And so having a marketing budget, plan, and target is really important. Word of mouth referrals alone are not typically, unless you're a one-man shop or a small enterprise, are not typically enough to sustain a construction company through the seasonal down when snow and ice are on the ground in the state of Indiana. I know a lot of the country is in the same boat as we are in those conditions. But then it's also really important that people know you have a plan for them. And right now I'm talking about employees specifically, because if you don't have a plan for them, someone else is willing to have a plan for them. And the number one response when I ask the question during interviews is, what do you want out of this employment? The number one response from my 20 to 35-year-olds is growth and experience. And if you don't give them growth and experience, someone else will. And so you're going to lose top talent. You've got to have a clear plan for your people, and you have to articulate it perpetually so that they know you're concerned about their future. And if that's in place and they can trust the plan and trust the person who has the plan, then your retention is probably going to be pretty healthy.
So this is going to bring us to a section of the show that we call our Fan Blitz questions. These questions come from our YouTube community. Go check out Upflip on YouTube and join the community there, where we'll give you the opportunity to pose questions to future podcast guests. So Joel, just some quick hitters here from the YouTube community. Khalid is a young electrician himself, and he would like to know how you got approved to work with a company such as Tesla, and how did your experience with them go?
So Tesla is kind of a badge of honor for us. We work with a lot of manufacturers, but they're by far the most sexy and well-known. And Tesla is going to do a total audit of your business. They're going to want to know years of experience on your management and leadership team. They're going to want to know positions, titles, and names. They're going to want to know gross revenue. They're going to want to see leads per month. They're going to see average conversion of leads. And so you're going to have kind of bear yourself before Tesla, and you're going to have to bring in all the data. And if you don't have solid answers on all fronts, you're probably not getting in the door, because there's a lot of competition for that product, both for customers to get their hands on the product, which is often scarce, and for the contractors to have the opportunity to deliver that product.
Then Bullet Beanie is asking, what profits are you expecting over the next few years?
Okay, so I've got a pretty rosy, we could always be wrong, but a pretty rosy view of the future of energy infrastructure. And we use that as an all-encompassing term for electrical and solar, plus battery storage, electric vehicle charging. Gas prices inflate dramatically, electric vehicles flying off the shelves. Instability in the market creates an incredible demand. We saw this at the beginning of COVID, an incredible demand for people to secure their energy future. So we're in their house adding solar panels for 40 grand. We're adding a battery system for 30 grand. And now they want us to do another 4 or 5 grand on the side of electrical upgrades to the kitchen and master suite and the outdoors. So we could easily put together a $75,000 contract for a single customer. And sometimes it's as high as $250,000. And that particularly is stirred up and exacerbated to our benefit when the market is perceived to be unstable. So I anticipate that we'll be a quickly growing company, the foreseeable future, with 35 to 50% year over year growth as we've had in the past. Now, that could get more difficult to sustain with size. We'll see. And that we'll be at about 14 million in gross revenue in 3 to 5 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty great growth there. That's going to do it for our Fan Blitz questions. Again, those come from our YouTube community. Check out Upflip on YouTube, join the community, pose questions for future podcast guests, and we will get them into the show. Joel, you've made some pretty major changes in your company over the past couple of years. Could you briefly talk our listeners through those changes and what caused you to decide to make those shifts?
One of the big changes we had was we adopted the system of EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. There's a book called Traction. Get a Grip on Your Business is the tagline. Gino Wickman is the author. He's pretty well known as well as the system. And what I came to realize is we have a system, a little bit broken at times, but at least a system for everything in the business except how to run the business. What are our departments called? Do we have all the people in the right seats, right people, right seats? Do we have a rhythm and a granular plan for meetings and who's involved in those meetings and how and where we take notes and manage the information that's generated and the decisions that are made from those meetings? Do we have clear recruiting strategy, a hiring plan, an onboarding plan? We really didn't have a system for operating the business, and that gave us the system. And I will say it's been kind of disruptive, sometimes felt like a negative, but overall a dramatic net positive. We have more clarity, more traction, more momentum, more confidence from our team members than we've ever had. But it took us a solid 6 months of disruption, internal disruption, to get all of those changes made. So I think if you could start earlier rather than later, your dollars ahead, be in front of it as opposed to behind it. So EOS was a really good move for us. We now have a system to operate the business.
As you kind of ran into some of those headwinds and challenges of implementing the new system, how did you get past those challenges? How did you keep yourself and your team committed to making the change?
Okay. So the vision of the future has to be clear, practical, inspiring, and attractive. So if you can't create an honest picture that is all 4 of those things, then it's hard for people to want to buy into it. So I think casting the vision is really important. 2, I think laying the ground rules is significant. For instance, I've said things like this to our team when we've relocated to a newer, bigger shop, or some things that are like a heart transplant. They're just really difficult and potentially chaotic. I've said, hey, here's the deal. It's going to be very easy for all of us to be tempted to complain on the back end of a failure. Right now, I'm officially disqualifying that behavior. And the only thing that's legitimate that you can do is to provide some front end advice as to how we mitigate the chaos. We know we're going to have failures. We know we're going to drop the balls on customers during this time. We're going to apologize and we're going to make it right. We know we're going to drop the ball on each other. We're going to apologize and make it right. It is not strictly the responsibility of the company to do this. You must participate, and I'm officially putting you on notice that these are the rules and you're a participant. If you don't like it, you can talk to me in private and we'll work through it together. So total clarity. That's one of our favorite words around here, phrases, total clarity. So I think the vision has to be clear. The rules have to be clear. And ultimately, those are probably 2 of the really big front end pieces. And remember, everybody has to hear things on average of 7 times. Everybody has to hear things on average of 7 times before it sticks and they have comprehension and mastery. So that comes back to that role of a teacher. You have to have the appetite for that, or people won't get it. And you'll wonder why they're going in so many different directions, confused and frustrated. It's because it's a heavier lift to get people on board than what we generally think it should be. And we have to go overboard to accomplish that.
Of these changes, what has contributed the most to revenue growth?
Having a plan for marketing and sales. we instituted a director of sales and marketing and combined those departments into one to give it cohesive oversight. It's not so big or so unruly that couldn't be accomplished. And so we knitted together a tighter connection on the front end. And there's consistency in the promises that are being made, marketing, and how those promises begin to get fulfilled, sales. So in the month of January, with that new model being in place for 5 or 6 months, we 3x'd our previous sales record. And I really think that's been a big part of it, a strategy and a restructuring.
When you're planning to launch a new product line, open a new branch, how far in advance are you starting that planning process?
This is kind of like my advice to my younger self is slow down to speed up, because slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I've never been good at slow. I've always been good at fast. But in the same token, or other side of the same coin, I truly believe that he who is first to a market wins. If you're a disciplined, aggressive team and you're first into a market, no one else will ever catch up, because first is so significant. And that's kind of how we've positioned ourselves here. So we've made some mistakes along the way that could have been mitigated or prevented, but also the overall value of being first to a couple of our local markets, I don't think anybody will ever catch back up or overturn that position, recognition, leverage, momentum. So I tend to not plan too much to answer your question. I tend to dive in, figure it out as we go. I tend to be very humble, to quickly admit when we've got it wrong, and to require the same attitude and approach for my team.
What's your biggest struggle or frustration as a business owner today? And what are you doing to deal with that?
So it's kind of the infrequent, I would say, effect of my aggressive approach. We're trying to get first into a market. We're trying to get way far out front in front of the competition, and we are growing quickly. So the tools around cash flow management, particularly between departments, who's spending what, and making sure it all pencils out, we don't get some inadvertent highs and lows, it's tricky. It's not my skill set. And so I'd say cash flow management and projections are really one of the most challenging. And part of that comes down to material procurement. Some materials are scarce, so we order them. They show up by surprise. Our 30-day terms are ticking. We've got to get those materials turned around and installed. We thought we were going to have a longer wait. And so it's market uncertainty that creates some of that. Sometimes it's external factors, but really we could do 95% of this successfully in-house by giving it quite a bit more attention and discipline.
With all of that, with market uncertainty, with supply chains being what they are, with all of the moving pieces of just having, even at 50 plus employees, right? What software and other tools are you using to stay organized and manage workflow?
We've made a decision. We've tried it both ways, but we've made a decision not to use enterprise-sized software where really everything's in one platform, and that's the major benefit. The detraction is that usually none of those tools individually are best in class. So we've moved away from that model, and we've picked up very welcome, best in class individual niche software platforms. So one example of this, a platform I'm really excited about, is Company Cam. Company Cam is a video capture, storage, and sharing platform. It only costs $19 per user per month, which is actually so cheap in contrast to the loss of information and the confusion of jobs and marching orders and what's taken place, how things finished up, wrapped up. It's a great way for estimators to capture front-end information, communicate it to the operations team, who then captures the final photos. Now we have long-term documentation and evidence covering our liability. We're able to remobilize to that job site in the future for warranty purposes or upsells more effectively, because we have video and images on all of our customer sites. So that's going to be a big win for us. And we just keep finding the area of greatest pain and then solving it with a niche software platform and a clear process around how to use that's known and followed by all.
Can you talk about how you have developed processes around software and how does it help you run the business effectively?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the most powerful things is really what I just said, and it's something that's still in its infancy at Jefferson Electric, but a clear process that's known and followed by all. If you have that, you're going to be an excellent business, assuming you don't have terrible attitudes around every corner. And so I know that I'm weak when it comes to process and discipline. I'm very flexible. I think into the future easily, but process and discipline are not my middle name. So delegating to people and honoring and praising them, the ones who have those strengths and are willing and able to then bring order to the team, give them the authority to make it happen. Support them, don't undermine it, and let them carry it forward and then give them the credit. Take responsibility, give credit, and it'll happen.
And then what about financial planning? What systems or processes are you using to organize and plan on the financial side of the business?
We have slowly developing a dashboard that contains our data, something like QuickBooks Online, which I like. It's our official accounting platform. It's a single source of truth for our financial health. The reports that are run in QuickBooks are very much backward looking as opposed to future looking. So we have a dashboard of information, and each number is very simple and very clear in that dashboard. It's things like number of leads per week, number of average conversion rate, dollars closed in revenue, number of callbacks, percent revenue in contrast to the previous month. It's all of these little things that are small numbers, easy to capture, easy to understand, and the majority of them are forward-looking or relate kind of as the single biggest sign of wellness in any function, not just department, but in any function of the business. So one platform, it could be a Google Sheet. We happen to use 90.io, which is an EOS platform. So it is a platform that it's cost effective, it's super user friendly, and it is created on the basis of EOS, our operating system. So it's a perfect pair.
We've danced around the topic a little bit throughout this interview, and you've definitely made mention. And I think from some previous answers, I can glean that you're very focused on your employees and them being key members of the team. So I want to just drill down into that a little bit more. And to start that out, how many employees do you have today? What roles are they filling, and what's their average pay?
Okay, so we have about 50 employees plus some temporary workers. We have a total of 3 departments. So we have me, the CEO, we have a COO, and then under the 2 of us, 3 departments. Finance and admin are 1, operations is 2, sales and marketing is 3. Everybody clearly falls into one of those departments. And we have an organizational chart that's actually a little bit different in that it's truly an accountability chart, because I'm more concerned about who's accountable for what than I am concerned about what their title is. And so it's just a little bit of a spin, but it's called an accountability chart. And that's also an EOS item. And so we've got clarity now. I mean, honestly, as a 40-person company, we didn't have that. We didn't have that clarity, and it's helped. I don't think in terms of hierarchy. I don't think in terms of rigidity, but many of our team members who did were expressing frustration. So we brought order and clarity for their sake. So team members used to, for context, apprentice electricians, like when I started at $10 an hour. 5 years ago, they were starting at $14 an hour if they're totally inexperienced. Now we're starting closer to $18, $20 an hour for entry-level graduates from high school, kind of apprentice electricians with some, good general work experience. And our team members will often earn an increase, both a cost of living increase as well as a merit increase of anywhere from maybe $4,000 to $6,000 a year. So the longer they're with the company and demonstrate value, they can really see quite a bit of growth potential.
And your staff has basically doubled over the last 2 years. How do you maintain the culture and skill level of your team through that period of growth?
Yeah, so culture is really important to me, and it's definitely our differentiator. So we actually hire for culture, not for skill primarily. We do look at skill, we do look at certifications and work experience, but our culture is based on the promises that we're making to each other and to our customers. It's how we're going to behave. It is the intangibles of who we are, and it's something we're not willing to compromise. We see that in the world at large, and sometimes we forget that it doesn't just belong to countries and regions. That kind of cultural importance also belongs to companies. And so we'll take on project employees. We really will. We're all about that, but we call it that. We identify it that at the leadership level, and we're intentional about having a plan around that. And then we also scare people with sincerity on the front end of the hiring process. We'll say things like, hey, one of the funny things about our culture is this, fill in the blank, and we'll give them some insights. We've painted a picture for them, but now we're saying something that's a little bit more maybe unique or disarming. And if you're not a fit with that, if you don't like that, it's who we are. So you probably shouldn't work here. And if you make a decision to work here anyways and you don't adapt, you're going to be frustrated in 6 months. And either we're going to have to let you go or you're going to have to find another job. And either way, there can be a lot of pain. And so we just scare them with sincerity. Let them know how it really is. Let them know how important it really is. And then the other part of that is look for true evidence of cultural fit. Because if you describe a culture that's engaging and inviting, people almost to a man will say, yeah, that sounds great. But the problem is, it doesn't mean they're a fit. It just like a true cultural fit. It just means they're inspired. And there's a difference. You want to make sure you hire for culture, not for fit, if culture is one of the differentiators of your company. And there could be many.
So that hiring for culture equation that obviously follows then that you're investing quite a lot in training for your employees. How do you look at the return on investment of that training?
That's a great question. I'd like to say I have more objective metrics, but it's probably pretty subjective. And it's kind of like this. We have a monthly operations meeting and a monthly alt-team meeting. We have weekly departmental meetings. And if we don't keep those rhythms, maybe we're too busy or it's, falls on a holiday or something. If we don't reschedule, keep the meeting, press forward, even if we just have a quorum, keep to it, stick to the plan. If we don't, then I've just over and over and over again seen things start to fall apart. People's attitudes can start to sour. People get frustrated. They weren't informed about something. They forget why we're doing what we're doing. They forget how we're doing what we're doing. And so I am the chief reminding officer. That's one of my most important jobs, that every month I tell people exactly who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we're going. And if I don't do that, then people just drift, myself included. It refocuses me as well. There's tremendous amount of value there. So it's really based upon experience more so than data.
What is your role? You just said chief reminding officer. How do you view your role as a business leader? And what does that look like in practice?
Great question. So I level with my team that I've never been a CEO of a 50-person enterprise. I'm experimenting on you. I scare them with sincerity too. And so I'm transitioning because my role of a 4-person company is very different. I cannot tell you how shockingly, dramatically different it is to be a 2-person company, a 4, an 8, a 16. Every time it doubles, the complexity at least doubles, and the systems and the communication. And it's crazy. I cannot overstate that. I've been shocked every single time. And so I have to transition with each one of those growth stages to a new me, a new role, a new skill set that I've never utilized before. And I'm almost completely out of estimating, but I still do some estimates. I'm almost completely out of project management, but I still do some project management. I mean, across the board, everything that we do today, I have personally done it. And I'm learning not to do it, but to how to better facilitate and organize other people in doing it. And so I'm still in too many things, and my team knows it and I know it, and it's a process, but I project within 12 months, I'll kind of be like true CEO role only, and I won't be touching these other things except to just provide support.
You've demonstrated abundantly and really nicely with some great examples of how culture is definitely a differentiator for you as an employer. Is that the same on the customer side? Is your company culture the main differentiator for your customers, or is it something else that sets you apart from other electrical companies?
Yeah, it's definitely culture. It's been so funny that we'll do a working interview. That's step 2 of the hiring process. Step 1 is an interview and reviewing all their information. Step 2, working interview, where we bring candidates onto job sites. And we've literally, more than once, many times, we've had customers pull one of our team members aside and say, hey, I've been working with you guys a while, and that guy over there doesn't seem like a fit. What's going on? They've said that to us. And we've said, oh yeah, it's just a shadow day. We're just trying him out. And the customer will say something like, well, I'm telling you, he's not right for you guys because you guys are more clean cut than that. Or you guys have better attitudes than that. Or, whatever the case may be, our customers most definitely identify our culture. And that's one example that's been reoccurring that we've laughed about.
And where are you finding new customers today? What's your most productive lead generator?
Today, it's Google. Yep, just Google, both organic and paid search results.
And how does that differentiate from, maybe it doesn't, from when you were first starting out and when you first started doing some marketing? What did you find was the best tool for building brand awareness?
Yeah, yard signs are surprisingly effective. I would highly recommend to everyone to buy yard signs. If you buy a yard sign, knock on the neighbor's door, give them a business card, and they know your neighbor used you and you want their work too, that has a really high conversion rate. But for us, because we didn't really market up until about 2.5 years ago, it was word of mouth referral. And that's really surprisingly one of the biggest gaps there is you have to tell people that you want word of mouth referrals. It can be as simple as putting that on your invoices. Family and friend referrals appreciate it. Something like that just jogs their memory, or tell them that the last time you're shaking their hand and they're satisfied, say something that's direct and honest. Hey, the number one way we get business is word of mouth referrals. If you decided to bless us like that, we would be forever grateful. Simple, clean, short, but it's powerful.
And as you get those referrals and leads from Google and other places, what systems or tools are you using to manage leads and then ultimately turn them into customers?
Yeah, so we have just converted from a more basic CRM, customer relationship management software, to HubSpot. And HubSpot is going to be the tool that we use to manage marketing leads. And then from that point, they're going to convert over into our operations and dispatching once marketing and sales are done with them. And typically between any major two software platforms, you can create an integration with a Zap or a Google Sheet or some kind of intermediary software, even if those two don't directly communicate with each other. So it's pretty easy to migrate customer information at this point from one platform to another. So sales and marketing will live in HubSpot or do presently, and then will flow into Service Fusion for operations, which then will flow into QuickBooks Online for finance and accounting.
Then how often are you communicating with leads? What does the funnel look like?
So we could have a little bit more rigidity around this, but we do experience some fairly dramatic highs as far as lead volume coming in. And part of that's just how viral the market is right now, how much money is out there, how quickly people are spending. But we'd like to reach out to a lead same day. And then we would like to have that first meaningful conversation within 48 hours. That's not hyper fast. It's not hyper slow. It's kind of middle of the road, in my opinion.
What's the number one piece of advice that you'd give to a new electrical business owner?
I think it's how you treat people. Treat people like gold and they will reward you. It's the golden rule, do unto others and even more and they will do it unto you.
One last question for you, Joel, to wrap things up here. What's your favorite business book and why?
So probably Traction by Gino Wickman, because it brought order and it's still bringing. It's a big lift. You could really get intimidated by it, but it's bringing order to our business. And I think that it's a significant, comprehensive, quality system to the degree that we could grow with it to be $100 million company and we wouldn't have outgrown it. But the beauty is we could still implement it as a $5 or $6 million company.
Joel Walsman of Jefferson Electric, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Hey, I appreciate it.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Upflip podcast. Make sure you check out Upflip on YouTube and also check out our blog, upflip.com blog, where we've got all kinds of great advice from industries across the board, from entrepreneurs at all levels of the journey. And make sure you come back here for more episodes of the Upflip podcast.